I think it was opportunistic. I think it was in a moment of high rage.
Information no one had except the person who must have put that knife inside of her.
He had 45 bullets in his body.
The intent was clearly to kill those officers and those first responders.
The reason we've been so successful with the police is because we target on the prolific offenders.
And it's a matter of building a mountain of evidence.
He is a man who will never again walk the streets of this city or any community.
Hello, I'm Dan Satterberg, and welcome to the Prosecutor's Post. This is where we take a closer look at the issues impacting criminal justice. We also want to introduce you to some of the men and women who work for justice every day. Today, we're talking to King County's Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Richard Harruff. Dr. Harruff and his team investigate all unexpected and suspicious deaths in King County. Now, the prosecutor's office works very closely with the medical examiner's office. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Harruff.
Certainly. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about the medical examiner and what's your role and your function within the criminal justice system?
Well, the medical examiner's office investigates all sudden, unnatural, unexpected deaths that occur in King County. King County has about 15,000 deaths per year, and we get reports on about half of those and investigate a fair percentage, eventually doing autopsies on about 10% of all deaths in King County, depending on what type of death it is.
I think people probably associate your role with autopsies, but you have investigators who go out to the scene as well, don't you?
Yes, our office encompasses all of the death investigation functions, starting with a scene investigation and concluding with the autopsy, and of course also with testimony if there's a criminal trial.
When your investigators go to the scene, are they working side by side with the police detectives who are there as well?
Oftentimes so, because the police investigators are in charge of the scene. We take responsibility for investigating the body. So we have a coordinated investigation with us focusing on the body and of course coordinating with the police investigation, which would be more or less intent depending on what type of death it is.
Now, a victim of a homicide, that person's body is a crime scene as well, isn't it?
Yes, of course. So we do not do the scene investigation. The police investigators do the scene investigation, but we do the investigation of the body, starting at the scene to put the death in context with the scene and to coordinate with the police and answer the questions that they may have at the scene that we can answer quickly so they can get on with their investigation as best as possible.
And then when you take jurisdiction over the body, you transport it back to your offices and you finally have an autopsy performed. What are you looking for as a forensic scientist and as a medical examiner?
Well, there's a routine that we follow. Basically, we're looking for the general condition of the body and specifically for injuries and disease processes that may be relevant with respect to the death. Also looking for any evidence that could be connected to support our opinions regarding the cause and manner of death.
And then you have to sign off on a death certificate and establish something about the death, your best opinion about how this person died?
Right. Of course, everyone eventually gets a death certificate, so we issue the death certificate, which is a summary of how that person died, along with the manner. Depending on the manner would be how it might be prosecuted. For example, many homicides would be prosecuted as murder cases, but we also investigate natural deaths, accidents, and suicides as well.
Now, you and your assistants will find yourselves in a criminal courtroom from time to time, I take it.
Yes, we testify together among us several times a month.
And what sort of findings do you testify about?
Well, our role is to provide the evidence of injury that led to death for the jury. Of course, the attorneys ask questions, but we're responsive in providing an objective assessment of the injuries, and also a bit of an educational function in interpreting those injuries so that everyone can understand how those injuries occurred. So our function is to be scientifically and medically objective in a way in which most people can understand so that they can make the decisions that they're responsible for.
Take, for example, a victim who's died of multiple gunshot wounds. What sort of testimony would you expect to give in a prosecution, a murder prosecution involving a gunshot death?
The basic questions regarding gunshot wounds are whether the wound is an entrance wound or an exit wound, which would determine which way they were shot, whether the back or the front, for example. Whether the entrance wound was close range or a distance range, so we provide some information regarding the range of fire.
And how can you tell that? From how far away? What are you looking for?
Yes, we look for evidence of close range fire, which would be stippling or soot deposition on the body surfaces or on the clothing.
So that's the blast from the firearm, whatever chemicals come out of with the shot.
Right. When a firearm's discharged, as well as the bullet, there's debris that's residue of the burning gunpowder that comes out in terms of smoke, fire, and little pieces of gunpowder, and those will travel a certain distance and then deposit on the target. Whether it's clothing or skin, and leave evidence of the distance of fire that can be interpreted through ballistics examinations to say how far away the fire was shot, or the shot was fired.
And will you also find and remove the bullet fragments or slugs that may still be in the body?
Sure. We recover the bullet. We trace the trajectory through the body, noting what type of organs are damaged. And then if the body still has bullets, we would recover those, identifying those with x-rays and then recovering them, and those become important evidence again for the firearms examiner.
In addition to gunshot victims, what are the other common sort of homicide cases that you will see?
Well, blunt force injuries, blows to the head are common, stab wounds, sharp force injuries, and strangulations, asphyxial type deaths are the most difficult.
What sort of training do you have to go through in order to become a medical examiner or an assistant medical examiner?
Well, medical examiner is a physician first, so we have a medical degree, and after that there's training in pathology, be 3 or 4 years, and training in anatomic pathology, and then an additional year in forensic pathology. So it's several years even after medical school to be qualified to be appointed as a medical examiner.
And so you're sort of a medical detective. I mean, you're taking an unknown situation and trying to put a story together that makes sense.
Yes, that's the excitement and the interest of the whole field, is trying to arrange evidence in an objective way so that we can suggest some possibilities or exclude other possibilities that would be useful for determining what actually happened.
And sometimes are you able to discover a key fact that really makes the whole case come together?
Oh, sure, right, because there's oftentimes surprises in which death appears to be natural or due to one modality of injury, and then we find something else has occurred, and it changes the whole complexion of the case.
Now, did you ever practice with live patients as a doctor?
Well, I have practiced. I was an intern in New York City, and I practiced overseas in setting up tuberculosis programs in India and Southeast Asia.
So what drew you into the medical examiner field then?
Well, when I was in Southeast Asia, I had a tuberculosis clinic for Hmong refugees along the Thailand border who were escaping the outcome of the Vietnam War. And many were complaining of symptoms that were similar to tuberculosis, but were actually due to chemical warfare attacks that occurred in Laos. And it became obvious that medical information was crucial in deciding whether they were actually being subject to a chemical attack. And so I got the idea, that being a medical detective can actually be somewhat useful as well as very interesting.
And it's absolutely crucial to finding the truth and justice in the cases that we prosecute.
Right. I think that's the bottom line in our society, is that it's so easy to make up rumors and suspicions and so forth. That's the human mind, the nature of the human mind, to invent things, and our duty is to provide objective evidence regarding what did happen and what did not happen.
There's tremendous interest in the nation right now. I think some of the top TV shows are about forensic scientists like yourself. Do you watch any of those shows when you come home from work?
Well, don't have too much time. I've watched probably most of them at one time or another. The one I like the most is NCIS.
And is it anything like the world that you live in?
Well, yeah, you know, we do have attractive young women that are totally enchanted with me.
And
but I'm joking, of course.
And you get it
yeah.
all done within an hour, right?
Right, and commercial breaks.
Commercial breaks too. Well, it's time for our commercial break, but thank you very much, Dr. Harruff, for spending some time on the Prosecutor's Post. If you'd like to find out more about our Prosecuting Attorney's Office and other programs we're working on, please visit us at kingcounty.gov. I'm Dan Satterberg. Thanks for joining us.